identity. اوكي بسم الله. كويس. طيب في المحاضرة نسيتها امبارح. نتكلم عن biosynthesis and degradation of heat. So this is the same slide I used in my first lecture, just to introduce heme. So it's a complex of protoporphyrin and iron. This is protoporphyrin. When it binds to iron, then it becomes heme. In the ferrous state, it has 4 rings, 4 chiral rings, and it also binds to certain substituents, mainly propionate, methyl, and vinyl groups. And it's a hydrophobic molecule. It's a flat molecule. Okay, so we're talking about that. So let's go over biosynthesis of heme. Lippincott, by the way, is a good reference. Although it's confusing in a certain part when it talks about hepatocellular jaundice. شوية بحسوا إنه في مش مظبوط. But I'll explain why. So there are 2 sides of synthesis in terms of organs in the body, the liver and erythroid tissues. And in liver, the main use of heme is for cytochrome P450 and enzymes, that metabolizing enzymes. And its rate of synthesis depends on the system. That is, in certain conditions, if you ingest certain drugs, you would have increased synthesis of heme in liver. On the other hand, with erythrocytes or erythroid tissues, synthesis is relatively constant, although it can be regulated at certain points. That's one, and mainly it is controlled by the level of iron in the system. What else? And the other thing is that synthesis occurs in mitochondria, cytosol, and then it goes back to the mitochondria. So the very first reaction takes place in the mitochondria. Okay, so these are the steps. So the first reaction is the rate-limiting and committed step. We talked about that before. And it's catalyzed by an enzyme known as alanine synthase, ALA synthase, aminolevulinic synthase, which requires vitamin B6. And it conjugates glycine and succinyl coenzyme A together, forming ALA. And the thing I told you before, the scientist that I worked with when I first started my PhD, he had this idea of using ALA to treat cancer, specifically skin cancer. And the idea is that cancer cells take up ALA and they can metabolize it to these porphyrin molecules. And then if he hits cancer cells with a certain light, it gets activated and cancer cells die. And he was a crazy person because he kept injecting himself with all of these drugs to see what the effect of these drugs. And his wife as well. All right. Alhamdulillah, مشترك اسمعها. كيف؟ لا مات لانه اكيد ما بعرفش اصلا عايش بالزراعه يعني قالت ايش 19 سنه والله ما فتره يعني فكان كبير بالعمر كان كثير كبير بالعمر بس كان جينيوس ريلي جينيوس يعني هو اللي طلع بال60s الهايبوثيسيس انه الكانسر سيلز عندهم ملتي دراج ريزيستنس هذه ما كانوا يعرفوها قبل هيك وحاربوه على هاي الهايبوثيسيس الملتي دراج ريزيستنس فحديث ال70s اللي صدقوا فيها الحكي هذا وغيروا الكانسر تريتمنت بناء على هيك فكانوا قبل يعطوا الكانسر بيشنت 1 دراج فبصير ريزيستنت لهذا الدراج ماشي فبغيروا لدراج ثاني بصير الكانسر ريزيستنت لدراج ثاني فبقول لك لا بناء على هيك what we will do we're going to give patients a combination of medications نعطيهم 3 drugs لو يعني 3 hits at the same time لو ريزيستنت لواحد الثاني حيشتغل ريزيستنت للثاني الثالث راح يشتغل فغيروا الايديا التريتمنت based on that so he was a genius person So anyhow, so the thing is, there are two types of ALA synthesis, two isoenzymes produced from two different genes. ALA synthase 1 is a liver-specific enzyme. ALA synthase 2 is an erythroid-specific enzyme. ALA synthase 2 is regulated by iron, whereas ALA synthase 1, the liver enzyme, is regulated by hemin, whereby you have induction of the degradation of the messenger RNA, reducing the level of ALA synthase in cells, as well as inhibition of the transport of ALA synthase from the cytosol to the mitochondria. That's where the first reaction takes place. We reduce the level of ALA in cells. Right. What happens then is that you have two molecules of ALA conjugating to each other, condensing, forming porphobilinogen. Okay, and this reaction takes place in the cytosol. All right. Then 4 molecules of porphobilinogen condense, forming the hydroxymethylbutane, and this reaction is a deamination reaction. So it's a deaminase that catalyzes this reaction. Now you would notice that actually, if you look at these reactions, in the series of reactions, it's actually deamination reactions, decarboxylation reactions, until we finally get to the product, which is protoporphyrin. Now, protoporphyrin is, that's why I put the red flag here, is the reason why blood looks red, because of that, because it absorbs light in the red wavelength. Okay? What else? The other thing is that, so the last reaction is spontaneous, but it's catalyzed by ferrochelatase. In erythrocytes synthesis, this is one difference between liver and erythroid tissues, that is the points of regulation. The first reaction is the main reaction that is regulated in liver. On the other hand, with erythroid tissues or cells, it's multiple points, not only the first reaction. It's multiple points, so you have regulation of the reaction catalyzed by ferrochelatase, the very last reaction, that puts iron into protoporphyrin, as well as this reaction right here that converts 4 porphobilinogens into 1 hydroxymethylbutane molecule. Now, these reactions take place in the cytosol. So the first reaction takes place in the mitochondria, then ALA goes out, and you have a number of reactions that take place in the cytosol until you get the coproporphyrinogen 3, which goes back into the mitochondria, and the rest of the reactions take place inside the mitochondria. Okay. And again, that shows where reactions take place. What's important as well in here is that you have a defect in any one of these reactions. That results in conditions known as porphyrias. And the word porphyria is Greek, and it means purple, because urine would look purple in color overall. These are rare inherited diseases. They can be autosomal dominant or recessive, depending on the condition. The affected organ can be erythroid tissues, or it can be hepatic. And hepatic conditions can be acute or chronic. So there's a lot of variability in these conditions. Now, something else that is important is that if the effective enzyme is up to the formation of porphobilinogen, then the patient would suffer from neurovascular symptoms, problems with neurological problems, as well as digestive problems. But once you have the formation of porphobilinogen and all the way to the end, then patients will become photosensitive, whereby sunlight would affect the skin as a result of accumulation of these intermediates that can absorb light. So there are differences between these different conditions. Now, these are the different conditions, and honestly, I don't know exactly what you should memorize. I hate for you to memorize everything, although I know you're able to. But I hate for you to do that. So we'll focus on a few points, okay, the general points. The most common porphyria is the cutaneous tarda. This is the most common, you should know that. You should know as well this reaction right here, the conversion of porphyrogen to hydroxymethyl beating. Any defect would cause acute intermittent porphyria. So this is important as well. I want you to know if the condition would make patients photosensitive or insensitive as well, depending on where it takes place. Okay. In terms of autosomal dominant or recessive, yeah, it's not really that important to me for now, for this course. Okay. أسماء الإنزيمز لا. أسماء الإنزيمز لا. Except for this reaction right here, اللي هو deaminase, the deaminase enzyme. This one right here. Formation of hydroxymethyl. طبعا الفيروكيلاتيز بدكم تعرفوا ALA synthase مكان you have to know that. The questions would be general, inshallah. Right. How about treatment? The patients are given infusion of hemin or hematin. Hemin is when you have iron in the ferric state. Okay, you know that. And it has chloride ion associated with it. Now, the hematin is another analog, except that it has hydroxyl group instead of the chloride ion associated with it. That's the only difference. But anyhow, both of these would inhibit the ALA synthase, so you would not have any accumulation of these intermediates. Another treatment is glucose, just give them glucose. And the reason why glucose should be given is that, and it's all by observation, and this is research. And you notice that people who fast would have severe symptoms or exacerbation of symptoms as a result of fasting. So this point is really important for you in the home. يعني واحد عنده porphyria بدك تقول له ما تصومش رمضان. It's bad for you. ليش؟ لأنه fasting would result in hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia would activate a transcription factor, which is this one right here. This transcription factor induces the expression of gluconeogenic genes. Gluconeogenic genes would produce all these enzymes to produce glucose. Okay, and hypoglycemia. Thus, one of the genes that are also induced is ALA synthase. Why? That's how it's regulated. No one knows why. Okay, so ALA synthase is the expression of ALA synthase is induced as a result of activating this transcription factor, which is activated as a result of hypoglycemia. So by giving patients glucose, you would have low activity or no expression of this no activity of this transcription factor, and as a result, the expression of ALA synthase would be as low as possible. There would not be any accumulation of intermediates. Okay, so it's all again by observation. But this is porphyria, and that's the biosynthesis of heme. So let's go over now the catabolism of heme, because that's important as well. Especially if we consider that we have 6 grams per day of hemoglobin turned over. This is a huge amount. 6 grams of hemoglobin are turned over, degraded. Now, RBCs are the largest storage place of heme. Erythrocytes are mainly destroyed by the reticular endothelial system in spleen and in the bone marrow, releasing hemoglobin. Hemoglobin, then you would have the release of heme from the globin protein. The globin protein is degraded into amino acids, recycling, and so on. And heme is then broken up into the different molecules that we will talk about right now. Now, the problem with catabolism of heme is that once it's released, it's a hydrophobic molecule. It's not soluble in blood, so it cannot be carried in blood, and it goes wherever it goes. It has to be carried. It needs a carrier. The other thing is that iron must be conserved, and that's another challenge in terms of catabolism of heme. And we'll talk about metabolism of iron before. So let's focus on degradation of heme. Now, the very first reaction is important because it's catalyzed by heme oxygenase, and the whole purpose of this reaction is to open up the ring, to have it linear. And the next reactions, the whole idea is to make heme or the intermediate more hydrophilic so that it can be excreted. Okay? So heme oxygenase catalyzes three reactions, oxygenation reactions, resulting in breaking up the molecule into a linear molecule known as biliverdin. Now, few notes about heme oxygenase reaction. One is that it requires NADPH, that's one. Two, it's the only reaction in the body that produces carbon monoxide. Of course, it's little carbon monoxide, and it can be tested, by the way, by measuring carbon monoxide in breath. There's a certain test that detects carbon monoxide. Now, what's important about these reactions, then you have biliverdin. Biliverdin is then converted to bilirubin. And it is a world of colors, because each one of them has its own color. And that's why if someone has a bruise, you will have all of these colors, rainbow colors, sort of. Basically, it goes something like this, from red to blue to green to yellow, and it goes away. Beige, well, once you have a bruise, you have release of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is red in color, so you have the bruise having a red color. Now, what happens then is that the heme, the ferrous iron, is converted to the ferric iron. Now, it looks bluish, not red anymore, so it looks bluish. So the color then becomes blue as a result of that. Now, when it gets converted to biliverdin, biliverdin has greenish color. So you have the green color in the bruise, and biliverdin is converted to bilirubin. Bilirubin has a yellow color, and finally you have this range of colors, orange and then yellow, and then it goes away. Okay? So this is why you have these colors in bruises, because of that. Right. So bilirubin is released. It's a hydrophobic molecule still. It's not really that hydrophilic, so it needs to be transported, and it binds to albumin. Albumin takes bilirubin to the liver. Now, and this is an important point, because there are certain drugs, like aspirin, for example, salicylates, they can replace albumin. So they bind to bilirubin, allowing bilirubin to cross the blood-brain barrier, and it can cause neurological damage. That's in infants specifically. Okay, so care must be taken. So now, bilirubin now reaches the liver. Okay, and in liver, it gets conjugated by diglucuronide molecules. The idea again is to make the molecule hydrophilic. And this is catalyzed by glucuronosyl transferase enzyme. So again, now we have bilirubin diglucuronide, hydrophilic, it goes into bile, from bile it goes into the intestines. Okay, something else is that if you have defective enzyme, that can cause certain symptoms like irregular Najjar and Gilbert syndrome. Now, if there is a problem with the transport of the conjugated bilirubin into the body, that would cause a condition known as Dubin-Johnson syndrome. So these names are, I think, important. You should know these names. Okay. So that's the story of bilirubin, and here summarized in this nice figure. So again, you have release of bilirubin. Bilirubin binds to albumin. It goes to the liver, where it gets conjugated. Now, so bilirubin now is the unconjugated form. It gets conjugated. So you have two types of bilirubin, conjugated and unconjugated. Now, the conjugated bilirubin goes into the bile, and from bile it goes into the large intestines. Right? Yes? In the intestines, bacteria would convert bilirubin into urobilinogen. Most of the urobilinogen continues its road all the way to the large intestines, where bacteria in the large intestines would convert urobilinogen to stercobilin. Stercobilin has this brownish color. That's the color of feces. Okay? Now these colors are important, by the way, when it comes to diagnosing diseases. Now some of the urobilinogen can leak out of the large intestines, but there is an enterohepatic pathway whereby urobilinogen goes back into the liver and it goes back into the intestines. But some of the urobilinogen can get out into the blood. It goes into the kidneys, where it gets converted into urobilin, and urobilin has the a yellow color, the color of urine, and it goes out as urobilin. So you have all of these intermediates now. You have the unconjugated bilirubin, you have the conjugated bilirubin, you have the urobilinogen, and you have the stercobilin, and then you have the urobilin. So different intermediates. Okay. How can we measure bilirubin in blood? There's an old and famous chemical reaction known as Vandenberg reaction. Regardless of that, I don't care about the chemistry, but the idea here is that this reaction takes place in two different solvents. If it takes place in water, then it's the conjugated bilirubin that makes a reaction and gives a color. So yes, a reddish color. Now, if the reaction takes place in an organic solvent like ethanol or methanol, then the conjugated bilirubin would make a reaction. If the reaction takes place in water, the conjugated bilirubin would make a reaction, not the unconjugated. Okay? If it happens in methanol or ethanol, then total bilirubin would participate in the reaction. Okay, having this dark red color, relatively. Now, this is how we can measure how much free bilirubin or unconjugated bilirubin by subtracting total bilirubin minus direct bilirubin. And now, the idea of direct and indirect is a direct measurement or direct bilirubin. This is the conjugated bilirubin because we can measure it directly. So direct bilirubin. Indirect bilirubin is the unconjugated bilirubin, which we can measure by measuring total bilirubin and measuring the direct bilirubin, that is the conjugated bilirubin. Okay? This is how we can measure bilirubin. And an important point is that most of the bilirubin that exists in blood is mainly the unconjugated form, not the conjugated form. Because once it gets conjugated, it goes directly into the body. So there's little conjugated bilirubin in blood. Okay? منيح. أي سؤال؟ طيب ماشي. So now the idea here, when we talk about problems with metabolism or removal of bilirubin, it's all related to jaundice. نعم. ايش الدايركت؟ يس اوكي. هلا لما تاخذ انت السامبل اللي هو blood sample وبتعمل هذا الرياكشن in water. What's reacting is actually the conjugated bilirubin. هذا هو الدايركت bilirubin. It's a direct bilirubin هو الconjugated form. اوكي؟ هلا عشان تحسب انت الفري bilirubin الunconjugated bilirubin بتاخذ السامبل بتحطه بسولفنت اللي هو ميثانول او ايثانول وبتعمل الرياكشن. هون الاثنين راح يعملوا رياكشن، الكونجيجيتد والانكونجيجيتد، لانه الاثنين soluble بالميثانول او بالاورجانيك سولفنت. عشان تحسب قديش في indirect bilirubin اللي هو الانكونجيجيتد بتنقص توتال bilirubin ناقص الدايركت اللي هو الكونجيجيتد. هذا فحص مختبري يعني عشان تعرف ايش اذا الواحد عنده هاي bilirubin ليفل ولا لو. اوكي؟ بس هذه عشان تعرف يعني انه عنده مشكله بالbilirubin ميتابوليزم ولا لا. اوكي؟ لانه هذه مهمه للكونديشنز اللي راح نحكي عنها هلا. جوندس اللي هي جوندس يس. فاحنا عندنا هلا الجوندس، نحكي عن الجوندس هلا. فلو عندي انا مشكله in any one of these processes, that would cause a problem. That would cause accumulation of bilirubin in blood or conjugated bilirubin, and that would cause jaundice. The person would have a yellow color of skin. Okay, so jaundice is caused by multiple reasons, or there are multiple causes. You can have what is known as hemolytic jaundice, meaning that there's a lot of hemolysis of red blood cells. A lot of heme is released from dead red blood cells. Now, although liver enzymes are efficient, if there is a tremendous amount of bilirubin in the system, it cannot catch up. It cannot conjugate all of the bilirubin in the system. So there will be bilirubin in blood. Okay, that gives again the indication of jaundice. Right. So hemolytic anemia, if there is hemolytic anemia, that would cause an increase in unconjugated bilirubin. Makes sense. That would increase conjugated bilirubin as well. That makes sense. That would also increase the amount of urobilinogen. That would increase the level of stercobilin as well. So everything goes up. As a result, okay, logically, stool would look dark in color. It makes sense. And urine as well. ليش؟ لأن there would be a lot of urobilinogen going into the blood. Most of it would go back into the large intestines, like you would have some also going into the blood, kidneys, and bladder. And that's why urine would look also dark in color. Okay, great. It makes sense, huh? حلو. هلا لو عندنا مشكلة لو عندنا obstructive jaundice, meaning that there is tumor cancer in the gallbladder or in intestines, there's a problem in delivering the conjugated bilirubin into the large intestines. شو راح يصير عندنا هون؟ Well, in this case, there would be very little urobilinogen. There would be little stercobilin as well. So stool would look pale in color. Makes sense. As well as urine. There is no urobilinogen that goes in. Okay? So it would look, okay. Anyhow, actually it would look a bit dark in the urine because there would be bilirubin going on, or conjugated bilirubin leaking out. Okay, that's obstructive jaundice. Now, there's something else. And there's another condition, and this is the confusing condition. This is the variable condition, which is if there is something wrong with the liver itself. It depends on what's wrong with the liver. And this is known as hepatocellular jaundice. So it can be viral infection, it can be cirrhosis, it can be, I don't know, damage in the liver cells themselves. There may be a problem with the conjugating enzyme, so the enzyme is not really conjugating the bilirubin very efficiently. So it depends on the condition now. So let's look at this table. So that would show the different indicators. Okay. Now, if that's a normal level of total bilirubin, direct and indirect, direct is the conjugated, indirect is the unconjugated, the free bilirubin. Now, if there is hemolytic jaundice, that would result in increase in indirect bilirubin, or the bilirubin itself, the unconjugated bilirubin in blood. Okay, there's a lot of bilirubin in blood. Okay, and if you look at, okay, what else? If you look at urine, it would look deep in color because there is a lot of urobilinogen that goes into the urine, and stool, they would look deep in color as well. There is an increase in urobilinogen, makes sense. There's a lot of conjugated bilirubin that is converted to urobilinogen, and there is a lot of urobilin as well. It makes sense. Now, ليش الانdirect بزيد؟ ليه ما زال الدايركت؟ ما بزيد بالسيرم لانه كله راح يروح على اللارج انتستنس، يعني بالبلاد ما راح يروح، كله راح يروح على الانتستنس. كيف؟ هذا اليوروبيلينوجين اللي بروح على الكدني. طيب؟ فانت اذا كان عندك كثير bilirubin, حيكون عندك كثير conjugated bilirubin, all of it would go down. Okay, ما راح يطلع لبرا. Okay. طيب لو عندنا If we have, and that would cause what is known as unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. The level of bilirubin in blood would be high. So this condition is known as unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Fine. Then if we have obstructive jaundice, in this case, you have this going on. You have a lot of conjugated bilirubin, but it's not delivered to the large intestines. Some of this conjugated bilirubin would go out into the blood, and that causes conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Makes sense. Now, if you look at the other indications, direct or the conjugated bilirubin would increase. The urine color would look dark. What else? Bilirubin would go also would be high in urine as well. Urobilinogen would be low because they're not being converted to urobilinogen in the large intestines. And the stool would look clayish color. And I tried to look for a nice table that summarizes everything in a logical way. That was what I could find, except that for this word, argillus. Argillus, I searched for argillus, and I couldn't find it in the dictionary, and it seems to be a German word. And it's written, it seems wrong, لأنه الشيخ جوجل بيحكي إنه it's double L, not a single L. So argillus, finally, I found out that it means clayish color. Clayish يعني إيش؟ لون الطين، يعني beige. حيكون لونه beige. It's not dark brown. كأنه حيكون لونه light brown or beige. So that's what it means. Right. What if we have hepatic jaundice? هون راح يكون عندنا a lot of question marks. It depends on what the cause is. Like in general, direct bilirubin, the conjugated bilirubin would go up, but not really that high. That's why you have a single arrow. And you have it in red. There's a question mark. Well, what if hepatic cellular jaundice is caused by a problem with the conjugation of bilirubin? Well, then you wouldn't have this. But the urine color would be deep. Bilirubin would go high in urine. Urobilinogen, urobilin, well, it depends on what the cause is. Color, it would look light or normal. Again, it depends on what the cause is. I think بطارية روت خلاص. طيب, finally, jaundice in the newborn, the main cause is that the conjugating enzyme is not really that efficient in newborns versus adults. It takes a time to reach normal efficiency, and that's why bilirubin is not conjugated very efficiently, and a lot of it goes into the blood. Of course, this is a problem. That is, if you have bilirubin in blood, it can cross the blood-brain barrier, and that causes neurological damage. Okay, so this is a serious condition. And the level of bilirubin also increases in blood. Of course, you know what the treatment is. Just expose them to blue light, because that breaks up bilirubin, making it into a more hydrophilic molecule. Okay?
هذا نورمال صح؟ نورمال.
هذا النورمال.
يعني هذا مش ممكن مثلا يتراكم في النيورونز ويعمل لي مشكلة.
كيف؟
يتراكم في النيورونز في الأعصاب.
بيعمل مشكلة.
يعمل لي كيرنكتروس زي هيك شيء. هذا ممكن. بس احنا بنعالجه هذا بالضوء يعني بنعطيه.
هلا اذا كان عندنا هاي ليفل يعني above normal. بس ليش في اطفال بيكون عندهم يعني high level of bilirubin in blood؟ لانه الانسان is not efficient.
So it's normal for babies to have jaundice, but it's still a problem.
It is okay for them to have jaundice. Not normal, I would say okay. يعني في عندك good percentage يمكن 50% بيكون عندهم jaundice or something like that. بس يعني treatable مش عظيم. Yeah. Yes. إيه دخل بالفيتال هيموجلوبين؟ I don't think so. No. I don't think في أي علاقة. No. Okay. محلاتكم خلينا ناخذ الغياب.